Hey, Earl here. Let me start with a number that stopped me cold the first time I heard it. 60%. More than half of all Americans who are retired right now did not choose to retire. They were pushed out, a bad back, a layoff, a parent who needed somebody to take care of them full time, a heart thing the doctor spotted at a routine checkup that ended their career the same afternoon. More than 6 out of 10 retirees did not walk up to their boss's desk, shake hands, and leave on their own schedule. They got shown the door, or their body showed them the door, long before they were ready. That number should change the way you think about every single piece of retirement advice you've ever heard. Because most of that advice assumes you get to pick the day. It assumes you'll be healthy and employed right up until the moment you choose to ride off into the sunset. It builds a plan around a choice you might never actually get to make. And that's the first lie. Not the $1 million one, we'll get there. The first lie is the assumption that you're in charge of your own timeline. Now let me tell you about the $1 million lie, because they're connected in a way that makes the whole thing worse once you see it clearly. For the last 20 years, the financial industry has been hammering one number into people's heads. $1 million, that's the magic retirement number. They keep printing on magazine covers and splashing across commercials for wealth management companies. $1 million. Save $1 million, retire comfortable. Don't have $1 million. Well, better keep working. Better buy our products. Better let us manage your money for a fee that comes right off the top, whether we grow your account or not. I am not a suspicious person by nature. I spent a good chunk of my life doing wrong things and going back to fix them one at a time. And that whole process taught me to give people the benefit of the doubt. But even I can see what's happening here. If you convince regular working people that the price of retirement is $1 million, most of them are going to look at their paycheck, look at their savings account, and decide the whole thing is hopeless before they ever get started. And people who feel hopeless don't open Roth IRAs. They don't shop around for better 401k options. They definitely don't look up how compound interest works. They just keep working and spending, which is exactly what the people selling expensive financial products want them to do. Here's what the $1 million number is actually based on. If you're spending $100,000 a year in retirement, the 4% rule says you need $2.5 million to support that. If you're spending $80,000 a year, you need $2 million. But if you've worked a normal job most of your life, and you're living a normal life, $100,000 a year in spending is not your world. We talked about this in the 4% rule video. We talked about it again in the $87,000 video. But I keep coming back to it because people keep arriving here thinking the number that applies to them is somebody else's number. Here's what the actual math looks like for a working class person. Say you're spending $45,000 a year right now. In retirement, the commute disappears. The work clothes budget disappears. Payroll taxes stop. Your real spending in retirement is probably closer to $38,000 or $39,000. Now, Social Security kicks in. If you've worked a steady job for 35 years, your benefit at 67 could be around $20,000 a year, maybe more. That means your savings only has to cover roughly $18,000 to $20,000 a year, not $39,000, because Social Security is handling the rest. $18,000 to $20,000 a year at the 4% rule means you need somewhere between $450,000 and $500,000, not $1 million. About half of what the financial industry keeps scaring you with. And for a lot of working class folks with a paid off house and a Social Security check, that target is even lower. We ran through all of that math before, so I won't build the whole tower again here. The point is this: the $1 million number was built for someone making $150,000 a year who wants to keep spending at that level forever. That is not most of the people watching this channel, and pretending it is keeps most people from doing anything at all. Now, here's where the two lies crash into each other. You've got 60% of people getting pushed out of work before they planned. And you've got those same people never starting to build because they were told they needed $1 million and couldn't see how that was ever going to happen. The result is a slow disaster that plays out quietly at kitchen tables all across this country every single year. A person gets a diagnosis, or the plant closes, or they're suddenly the wrong age when the company starts cutting, and they end up retired at 58 or 61, not because they planned it, but because the decision got made for them. Then they open up whatever accounts they have and see what's in there, and whatever they saved or didn't save is now the whole plan. No more contributions coming in, no more runway. That number is it. If you were building toward $1 million and you've got 240,000, that feels like a catastrophe. But if you understood that 240,000 plus a paid off house plus Social Security might actually cover your real numbers, it feels a whole lot different. The lie doesn't just keep you from saving, it keeps you from seeing what you've already got. Let me tell you about a man I want to call Bobby. He worked at a distribution center for 22 years. Good job, solid job. The kind of work that requires your body to show up completely every single day, which it did until he was 59 and a half. Not the IRS's 59 and a half, his own. That's when his knees decided they were done. 2 replacements in 18 months. Rehab, physical therapy, more time off than his leave policy allowed. He didn't get fired. He would never have said he got fired. But when the dust settled, going back to that warehouse floor at 60 was just not something his body was going to do anymore. Bobby had a little over $200,000 in a 401k. His mortgage was 3 years from being paid off. His Social Security at 67 looked like about $1,900 a month. On paper, he wasn't close to ready, but here's what actually happened. His wife Cheryl was still working part-time at a pharmacy, bringing in about $22,000 a year with health benefits. Bobby got on her plan. They tightened the budget, paid off the mortgage 2 years early, and left the $200,000 in his 401k completely untouched. 4 years of compound growth without a single withdrawal bumped it to around $260,000. Bobby made it work, but barely, and only because Cheryl had benefits. If she hadn't, the healthcare gap from 60 to 65 would have been a completely different story. We've talked about sequence of returns risk in previous episodes, and Bobby got lucky that the market cooperated in those early years. Bobby didn't plan to retire at 59. Bobby got retired at 59, and the only thing standing between him and a real financial emergency was the savings he had stacked up before someone else made the call for him. That is not a feel-good story. That is a warning shot. If this is already hitting different than what you expected, go ahead and hit the like button before you forget. It costs you nothing, and it helps this channel reach more regular working people who need to hear this stuff. Now, let's talk about what forced retirement actually looks like in practice, because there are a few different shapes it takes, and most people only picture one of them. The most obvious one is your own health. Your body quits on you. Backs, hearts, knees, hips, lungs, eyes. The jobs that working class people do are physical, and physical work takes a toll over decades. People in physically demanding occupations retire earlier on average than people who sit at a desk, and not because they planned it. Their bodies wore out. That's not a personal failure. That's what happens when you stand on concrete or carry things or run heavy equipment for 30 years. But health isn't only about your own body. It's also about somebody else's. Caregiving is one of the least discussed reasons people leave the workforce early, and it catches people completely off guard. A parent with dementia, a spouse diagnosed with something serious, a sibling with no one else in the picture. ARP has tracked this pattern for years and found that roughly a third of people who retired earlier than planned did so to take care of a family member. You cannot always know when that moment is coming. You can only decide right now what your finances look like. If your income suddenly has to stop, then there's the layoff, and this one is the sneakiest of all. If you're 55 and you lose your job, You're not the same job candidate you were at 35. Age discrimination is illegal. It also happens every day in ways that are almost impossible to pin down and prove. Companies restructure. Roles get eliminated. The new team turns out to be 27 years old and sitting in an open office that your knees can't handle for 8 hours. You spend a year sending resumes, then 2 years, then you're 58, and you've burned through severance and drawn down savings, and the math has changed completely. Let me introduce somebody named Carl, 53 years old, industrial sales for close to 30 years, which is about as blue-collar and office job as they come. Made decent money, always planned to retire at 65. Never thought too hard about it because 65 felt far enough away that he'd figure it out when the time got closer. His company got acquired. His division got restructured. He got a severance package and a handshake in November. He sent out resumes until his arm got tired. By the time he was 56, he'd burned through the severance, pulled $60,000 out of his IRA paying taxes and penalties to do it, and quietly accepted that a career-level sales salary was probably not in his future anymore. Not because he wasn't good at his job, because he was 56, and the job market for 56-year-old industrial salespeople is what it is. Carl ended up at a building supply store, decent pay, zero of the retirement planning he needed. He had about $190,000 left in accounts after the IRA withdrawal, a mortgage with 11 years remaining, and a Social Security estimate that was going to be lower than it should have been because of the years of lower earnings he was now adding to his record. He wasn't going to be in crisis, but he was going to be tighter than he needed to be for the rest of his life, largely because nobody ever told him the $1 million target was never his number to start with. Now here's what I want to talk about for the rest of this video, because everything I've said so far only matters if it changes something you do. The mindset shift I want you to make is this. Stop thinking about retirement preparation as a target you're trying to hit on a day you get to choose. Start thinking about it as insurance against the day somebody else makes the choice for you. The data says that day is coming for 6 out of 10 of you. More likely than not, you don't get to pick your date, which means the real question isn't whether you'll be ready when you decide to leave. The real question is whether you'll be okay if you get pushed out 5 years sooner than you planned. That reframe changes everything about when you start and how urgently you take it. If retirement is something that might happen to you rather than something you choose, then starting early isn't optional. It's the whole strategy. Every year of compound interest you stack up before your body or your employer makes the decision for you is a year of cushion you'll be very grateful for. The earlier you start, the more runway you've built before the timeline gets pulled forward without your permission. We've talked about the freedom number before. Your annual expenses times 25 to 30 gives you your target. But the number that matters most in a forced retirement is the gap number, which is the amount your savings needs to produce each year after Social Security fills in its portion. If your annual gap is $15,000 and you've got $350,000 saved, you're covered and then some. If your gap is $15,000 a year and you've got $60,000 total, Social Security alone is not going to make up the difference, and you've got a real problem. Here's the exercise I want you to do today. Go to ssa.gov and pull up your Social Security statement. If you don't have an account there, make one this week. Your statement shows your estimated benefit at 62, 67, and 70. Write down the 67 number, then write down what you actually spend per month and multiply it by 12. Subtract the annual Social Security benefit from that spending number. Whatever is left is your gap. Multiply the gap by 25. That is your real retirement target, not somebody's magazine cover million. Your own number, built from your actual life. For most working class people doing this math honestly, the number lands somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000. That's not nothing. But it's also not 1 million. And the difference between those two targets is the difference between a plan that feels achievable and a plan you never start because you can never see the end of it. Now, let me talk to the people who are already in the forced retirement situation. Some of you watching this aren't building toward it anymore. You're already in it. You got pushed out earlier than you planned, and now you're trying to figure out what the next 20 plus years look like with what you have. First, stop running your math with the scary calculator. Those calculators are built on the $1 million assumption and the assumption that your expenses stay flat in retirement. And neither is likely true for you. Run the real math. Gap number times 25 with Social Security in the picture and a paid off house if you have one. The real number is almost always less frightening than what the calculator showed you. The second thing is that if you're between 55 and 65 and you need income, there are tools for getting to your money before the standard age locks get in the way. We covered all 4 of them in the early retirement access video, so I won't rebuild the whole thing here. The Rule of 55, the Roth conversion ladder, the taxable brokerage bridge, and 72 TSEPP are your tools. Go watch that episode if you haven't. The link is in the description. The point is that the 59.5 wall is not as solid as it looks. Third, think about a bridge job like the one we covered in the Barista Fire episode. Not a forever job, a strategic one. $250,000 left alone for 5 years at 7% becomes $350,000. A part-time income that covers half your expenses means you barely touch the principal at all. And those 5 years of compounding change the picture completely. Then there's healthcare, which I know sounds like a footnote, but absolutely is not one. If you're under 65 and your forced retirement left you without employer coverage, the ACA marketplace is your bridge to Medicare. Here's the thing most people who spent their career earning a decent wage don't know. If your income drops below roughly $50,000 a year for a single person, or somewhere around $80,000 for a couple, the income-based subsidies on the marketplace can cut your monthly premium dramatically. Some early retirees on modest portfolio withdrawal incomes pay very little for solid coverage. That's one of the structural advantages that working class and regular income people have over high earners that almost nobody in the FIRE world talks about. And we've mentioned it in a few earlier videos because it deserves to be mentioned more. Think about a woman named Darlene, 58 years old, left her job as a bookkeeper when her mother's Alzheimer's got serious enough that someone needed to be around during the day. Darlene had $175,000 in retirement accounts and owned her house outright in a mid-sized city in Ohio. When she ran her gap math honestly, she found she needed about $16,000 a year from savings after Social Security. Her ACA premium was low because her income was low. She started doing bookkeeping for a handful of small businesses just from home, about 15 hours a week, and that brought in around $14,000 a year, which covered almost everything. Her portfolio sat there and kept growing. At 62, she claimed Social Security a bit early. The benefit was reduced, but between the Social Security and the occasional bookkeeping job she picked up, her savings barely needed to do any heavy lifting at all. Darlene didn't plan to leave the workforce at 58, but when she ran the real numbers instead of the scary ones, she found out she wasn't nearly as far behind as she had been led to believe. The $1 million myth had been telling her a lie about her own situation for years, and she almost let it cost her a plan that was right there in front of her. The $1 million lie does something specific and awful to people. It doesn't just keep them from saving, it destroys their self-assessment. It makes them believe that the gap between where they are and where they need to be is insurmountable, when the gap between where most working class people actually are and where they actually need to be is often much narrower than any of them realize. And the 60% number does something awful of its own. It is a warning that most people never receive until after the decision has already been made for them. You cannot walk around assuming the retirement timeline is yours to control. You've got to build like the timeline might get moved without your input, because for more than half of you, it will. I wasted a lot of years. I made a list and worked through it one item at a time. Karma rewarded the effort, not the perfection. That's how this works too. You don't need a perfect savings rate or a perfect timeline. You just need to start doing the right things and keep doing them. Because the people who survive a forced early retirement are almost always the ones who had been building, even slowly, even imperfectly, long before the rug got pulled. Do the real math and build for the day that somebody else might choose for you. Here's what I want from you today. Go to ssa.gov, look up your projected benefit, and run your actual gap math the way I walked through it. Then come down to the comments and type million and your real retirement number, the one you got from your actual life, not from a magazine, whether that's 220,000 or 550,000 or something else entirely. Write it down and make it real. When you see somebody else's number in the comments, give them a thumbs up. We're all running the same math and trying to get to the same place. Subscribe if this is the kind of straight talk that actually helps. No trust funds, no crypto, no just make six figures advice. Real numbers for people with real jobs. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.